and I am the immediate past president of the Queensland branch of the Australian Association of Teachers of the Deaf. And in that role, I became one of the co-chairs for the 23rd International Congress on the Education of the Deaf, which we call ICED, in 2021. So ICED was due to run in 2020, and we were planning on that being a live, in-person, face-to-face event. It's an international conference, so we wanted all of our participants obviously to attend here in Brisbane, and COVID came along and we postponed for a little while, firstly, thinking that maybe we would be able to run the event in person. Then we decided we would have to run a hybrid event. So we hoped that we would have some people, maybe our Australians and our close neighbours, New Zealanders, come along and attend the event in person. And then as our lockdowns rolled out, particularly here in Australia, we came to the realisation that really the only way we were going to be able to move forward was to transpose the event into a completely online event. It was challenging for everybody to have a virtual event. I think some of the major challenges for us were we were always very keen that we got the access piece right for our deaf and hard of hearing participants. So this conference runs predominantly for teachers of the deaf, but what we find is that we have a mix of hearing people, deaf people, and people who identify as being hard of hearing. And so we had a requirement very early on when we were talking with Arinex that we needed to provide not only interpreting, Auslan interpreting, Australian Sign Language interpreting, but that we needed to have live captions in our sessions as well. That's what we pitched for when we put in our bid to run the Congress, that we would provide all of our sessions in spoken English, in Auslan, Australian Sign Language with interpreters, and that we would have live captioning. Prior to the conference we ran here in Brisbane, there was a bit of, it was in Athens, it was in the middle of their financial crisis, right in the middle of that, which caused them no end of problems, and they probably didn't get that access piece nailed down as well as they would have liked to. So there was actually a little bit of feedback from the deaf community that the deaf participants weren't happy with the level of access that was provided at that conference. And we came away from that conference with an additional requirement that we provide international sign interpreting in all of our sessions, which was never our intention. It doubled our interpreting budget, an extra set of interpreters to be available. And interpreters are rare breed at the best of time, and then finding an extra set of people who had the skill of being able to use international sign to interpret was an extra challenge that we had to work out how to deal with. We had to source those people from across the world. We had originally planned that we would source those people from across the world, that we would fly them all here to Brisbane. There was the issue of needing to pay for them to get here, to pay for them to be accommodated, to pay for their time, for their work. And then when the Congress was translated into being fully virtual, then we had to deal with the management of recording all of our presentations and then sending them away to two different sets of interpreters. There are always at least two interpreters working on a presentation usually. They swap in and out. They need some time to rest their brain. And so that was a huge logistical challenge that Arinex just managed amazingly well, of having to send the presentations off, to package them in a way with the presenters' part, I suppose, their presentation, and then package that, send it away to an interpreter, have an Auslan interpretation done, then send them to another set of interpreters, have an international sign interpretation done, then send them to an organisation that provided the captioning as well. So, and then package it all together. So we ended up with something that had never been done before, something that we're to this day incredibly proud of, that gave people the most amazing access that they have ever had at this Congress, which was no mean feat. And people who move on now and run conferences post our Brisbane conference will find that they have an additional challenge now of having to provide all of that access as we did in all of their presentations. Yeah, and we're so proud of that. We went into this determined that we would provide access for all of our participants in every session. That hadn't always been the case in congresses before, and we came out of it with a level of access that we had never imagined. That really is just superb. And I think that members of the deaf community were able to look at what we provided and really know that we listened to their feedback. There was a lot of negative talk about the Congress in the early days, and a lot of people from the deaf community contacting us and saying, wasn't very good the last time, how can we trust that you'll do a better job? You're hearing people, are you listening to us? Really early on, we got an ambassador on board, a very well-known deaf man, Colin Allen, and he was so generous with his time and with his engagement with the deaf community. He really got along beside us, helped us understand what the issues were that the deaf community were feeding through to him, and worked with us and provided that level of communication between the organising committee and people out in the deaf community, and really built people's trust. You build a lot of expectation at the same time, and so we had this real sense of responsibility of, are we going to be able to achieve this thing? And Arinex backed us all the way. They just kept, we had to explain it a little bit at the beginning, why it was important, why we wouldn't let go of it. And once everybody understood how important it was, the difference it was going to make to our audience and our participants, then it just became a given. Then it just became, how will we get this done? How will we achieve this? What work do we need to do? How do we pull it all together? Who are the right people to make it happen? And that's just a joy, because even in the work that I do as an educator, daily I have to talk to people about what access means to deaf and hard of hearing people, and why it's important, and why one little piece of it isn't enough, and that you have to provide the whole view and access at whatever level it is that people require. And it's only then that you get it right. So very, very proud of what we achieved, and ever so thankful to Arinex for the support and the fact that they just walked alongside us. They understood what we needed. They accepted that that was the bottom line for us, and they helped make us happen. Yeah, it was difficult. I think people didn't know what they were going to get, and the conference wasn't cheap. There was a significant cost to people to attend, and I think at first people really expected that when we told them we were transferring it all into a virtual environment, that cost would drop significantly. What they didn't realise was that our costs actually went up at that point, because then we had to move to that space of pre-recording and packaging all of the work together and every presentation together, and that was quite costly. So there wasn't a way for us to drop the cost very significantly for people. So people were saying, A, we don't know you, B, we're not sure what it is that you're going to provide for us. You can't give us any examples because it's not a thing anyone's ever done before. And C, it's costing a lot of money. We're investing a lot of money in something we've never seen, something we don't know is going to work. Not sure we trust you. So again, there was a lot of communication that we needed to do with people. So we had our ambassadors, we had a number of ambassadors, and we were feeding information to our ambassadors and saying, this is what it will look like, this is how it's going to work. You have to assure people that we've taken all of these things into consideration. We're committed to full access in every presentation. The whole thing will be online. There's different ways people will be able to interact with each other. And so really it was just a case of communicating with people where we could, trying to show them examples of a thing we'd never done before that didn't exist. Closer to the date, here in Australia, we have a national committee. And so closer to the date, we were able to walk our national committee through, I suppose, the framework of what the online platform would look like. And one of the Arinex crew actually got online and did a Zoom presentation for us, for all of our national committee. And they were able to walk us through and say, okay, this is the shell and this is what it will look like. Here's the section where you can see who the participants are. Here's where our delegates can talk to each other. This is what an online exhibitor space is going to look like. And so those people were then able to go back to their state committees and say, it's okay, I've seen it, I understand what it's going to look like. You just have to trust them. It will be a good event. And so we just moved forward in that way, trying to convince people we knew what we were doing and to ask them to trust us, that we had made a commitment, a really firm commitment around the access, and that was the way we were moving forward. Exhibitors were tricky because they didn't know what to expect. For an exhibitor to move into a virtual space and not have that sea of people walking past them to get their morning tea or their lunch every day, and not have the ability to catch people and chat with them face to face was really tricky. And again, we just had really good working relationships. We knew most of our exhibitors personally. We had personal working relationships within our broader committee with those people and those organisations, and most of them stood by us and trusted that we'd get people into the space and that we would encourage people to interact with them in an online environment and move forward that way. We were really committed to trying to find ways for people from developing countries to attend the conference, and we worked to develop a sponsorship program. So we had a program where people could sponsor. You could add a little bit of money onto your registration fee to put towards a sponsorship program. And originally we were looking at actually paying for people to fly to Brisbane and assisting them with their accommodation and all of those sorts of things. And when we changed into the virtual environment, we shifted that into, well, now all we need to do is pay for people to have a registration. So I think in total we sponsored about 16 people in that way, where they got to attend either completely free of charge or at a much lower rate. We probably had a larger audience of deaf and hard of hearing people than we would have seen attend the Congress in the past, because those people were fairly well assured that we were going to get the access piece right and that they would be able to attend and see presentations in a format that they were able to access easily. So if they were hard of hearing and they needed to rely on the captions, they were there, or if they were a sign language user, then there were two different formats for them there. And we did have, not in every presentation, but occasionally we had a deaf presenter. And so that person presented in sign language. And so they might have been American and they would present in their own sign language. And then there was a way of having all of that translated in the background. or we just knew that people would be able to access either the Auslan or the international sign version. So that would have been a newer audience for us than we've had in the past. One of the surprising highlights for me in shifting into the virtual space was the surprising number of presenters from across the world who were so committed to the event. We ran the event, we rolled the event out live in Brisbane time. It was a bit of a risk, and we honestly thought, the only people we'll have online with us in that environment will be the Australians. Let's face it, we'll just get the Australians online and everybody else will view it when they wake up, wherever they are in the world. What we found happened was that almost all of the presenters got up, whatever time of the day it was, where they were, and got online to be live while their presentation was being broadcast. And they let everybody know in the chat room that they were there. And we had this really amazing sense of community where a presentation was running and the presenter was answering questions and responding to comments live while it was happening. And it really created this sense of engagement and community. And teachers always talk about one of the best things about being at a conference that's face-to-face is all of the incidental connections that you make and all of the chats you have over your coffee and your pastries. And we were really concerned that we would lose that there was no way we would have people connecting together. And the whole theme of the Congress was the power of connection. And we were really worried we would lose that. But because the presenters made that effort and they were there live and interacting with people live, it was like we had a Twitter feed, but it was like a Twitter feed on steroids with hundreds of people interacting and people having that ability to chat live with the presenter while the presentation was running. People who would never talk to the presenter after the presentation because they'd be too shy or they wouldn't want to interrupt them. And we found all these people engaging online in this really amazing environment. It was really exciting and it really got a buzz going, and the presenters loved it. And the audience loved it as well. It was completely unexpected. There is such benefit, particularly for us here in Australia. We're so far away from everybody else. It takes such a long time for people to get here. You've really got to make a commitment if you're going to come to Australia for a conference. You know, you're getting on a plane for 10, 12, 16 hours. So I can really see the value of moving forward in that way for international events where you can still create that sense of community and engagement that we had in ICED that we didn't ever expect to achieve. And I think that you can create that in an online virtual environment in ways that we had never imagined before. So there's certainly lots of value in running programs like that, particularly when you want to reach that far-reaching audience. And even, Australia is a really big place, so even just nationally, online events that are virtual are really useful. We were really worried that people would all be suffering from Zoom fatigue and not want to engage and not want to turn their cameras on. They would just sit back passively and let the information wash over them. Didn't happen. People were so engaged. They connected with each other. They talked to the exhibitors. They talked with the presenters. They let people know what they thought. They took photos of where they were and posted them online for people to see. It was really beautiful. Arinex are amazing. They were incredible. So Arinex, coincidentally, Arinex had organised the only other iteration of this Congress that has been held in Australia in Sydney in 2000. And we put the work out to tender, if you like. We didn't immediately choose Arinex because of that experience. We had a budget. We were looking for an organisation that could do what we needed to do as a face-to-face event. And so put it out to tender. Arinex were by far and away the best offer that we got. And from the really early days, they worked hard to connect with us, to understand what it was that we needed. And even in that really early time of us talking to them about, okay, we've got this group of people who will attend this Congress who have really specific access needs, and we will not budge on that. That is our absolute baseline. We must provide. We have given our promise. That is our baseline. We have to provide that. And they understood it really quickly, and they moved forward with that as one of their goals and our intents, and they were unwavering in their support. Really well-organised people. They really know what they're talking about. They're an absolute pleasure to work with, and I miss them. I miss meeting with them. I miss all of our conversations, and they were so invested and just such an amazing support to us.